The Supreme Court has just issued some new opinions, including one about gun rights. Let's bring in CBS News chief legal correspondent Jan Crawford, the person to talk to in these situations. So, Jan, can you explain what was the case about gun rights? What was at the heart of the case, and how did the justices rule?
Well, first of all, this was a case where a Texas man, a guy named Ali Hamani, was prosecuted for owning a gun because the government found a small amount of marijuana in his house, and he admitted he smoked pot a few times a week. The government said, wait, that violates a federal gun control law that prohibits people who are unlawful users of controlled substances from having a gun. It doesn't matter if you're an addict or you abuse drugs. You know, you can just use them 1 or 2 times a week. That was the government's position. Pretty broad, and that's what the court said today in rejecting the government's argument and prosecution of Mr. Hamani. The court said that in a decision they all agreed with was the right outcome. The court said that the government went too far when it tried and it did prosecute Mr. Hamani, who was facing 15 years in prison for owning a gun in his home because he had some marijuana, and that the government had to show more, that there was no historical basis for this kind of prosecution. It wasn't like a habitual drunkard, which was the way they referred to it in the past, and had some of those laws that the government pointed to. Under the government's broad theory, it could prosecute anyone. A husband who used his wife's Ambien, that would go under the Controlled Substances Act. A college student who borrowed some Adderall, studying for exams. All of those, under the government's view, they could be prosecuted for and stripped of their Second Amendment rights. The court today, in a decision by Justice Gorsuch, said no. That goes way too far. That's way too expansive. The government has to show more. We're not talking about addicts. We're not talking about people who are convicted of felonies. We're not talking about people who might be dangerous to themselves or others. Just this kind of occasional drug user, a drug that's pretty commonly used now, that does not qualify. So a big win for Mr. Hamani, a decision that all the justices, an outcome they all agreed with. They had some different opinions on how to get there, but they all came together on this one, which is not going to be the case in the remaining cases that they have left. The big ones are still to come. I think our next opinion day, we're just getting word, will be next Tuesday.
Yeah, and after next week, Jan, don't those justices go on a summer break? I recall when Roe v. Wade was overturned in 2022, that was at the I think the last day of the court session.
The end, the last week. And you're absolutely right. We always say they like to finish by the end of June. But of course, like the rest of us, sometimes these big, important things that they're grappling with, that takes a little longer for them to get through. So we've seen in 2024, for example, they went to July 1st. So it's possible that they won't finish up by June 30th. They may take an extra day or two to get through some of these big decisions, because the ones that are left, and why it always, the big ones, controversial ones we get at the end, are the ones that divide the justices. You have the most writings. They have they think that there's different legal ways to get to maybe the same outcome, and so they really take longer, all that back and forth that they have to do. And that's why we're still waiting on those big ones that go to the heart of presidential power, like whether President Trump can redefine what it means to be a citizen in this country and really kind of do away with our understanding of birthright citizenship, whether or not he can fire a member of the Federal Reserve Board, whether or not he can fire other people, the Federal Trade Commission, social issues like transgender athletes in girls' sports. Huge cases still to come, and we'll get a few more starting next Tuesday, Vlad.
All right, Jan Crawford for us reporting from Washington. Jan, thank you.